Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dave DeMillo from Gemalto/SafeNet, and I think I'm flying solo here today on our side. I'm just checking to see if any of our marketing folks joined, and I think it's just me. So there's about, I don't know, 20 or so of you folks on the line. So welcome to the webinar. The topic today is getting your licensing project off the ground. A little bit about me. Here at Gemalto, we work with companies such as yours every day to help them really understand what their software monetization strategy is, what it means, and we'll explain a little bit more what all that's about. But the idea is to help companies put a system in place that helps them monetize their software. And what that means is helping them with licensing policies, license enforcement, packaging, to the extent of, trying to have some sort of control over what, how your customers use the product, how they take modules as add-ons, how to deal with upgrades, how to deal with usage-based pricing, and so forth. So a little bit about me first, because I think it's somewhat relevant here. I run our consulting business out of our professional services team, the business. And what that means is I work with our largest customers to help them put together their plans, their vision, and really try to answer the question of how is all this stuff going to work? Prior to SafeNet, prior to Gemalto/SafeNet, I guess, I worked for IBM, owning the piece of the business, the licensing for a piece of the business, the Rational software brand, which was, at the time I left, it was about $1.5 billion division. So I've seen some of the challenges that our customers see, again, trying to understand how everything fits together, trying to put together a customer experience that works for your end users, that works for your sales teams, helps you deliver, helps you execute, keeps costs low, all that stuff. So it all sort of fits together. And sometimes if you're big enough of a company, you may find yourself in a situation where you have maybe a couple or 3, 4, maybe even dozens on the higher end, different licensing technologies that you've acquired over time, and you realize that you need to standardize and so forth. So on the Gemalto side, again, I end up working with our larger deals, helping our customers really get their arms around how they're going to figure all this stuff out. So I've got some slides here today. I'm probably going to end up talking to you off the slides, around the slides, put it that way, and not exactly just preaching what's on the slides. I think we have a place for questions in the GoToMeeting thingy. So we'll hold those off at the end, and we'll go from there. All right, so I have to make this smaller. Okay, so the agenda is around what is software monetization, and do I even need a software monetization program? And I'll get to what all that means. And the idea is to try to figure out how to define what you need, what's important to your business, getting executive buy-in, and things like that. So let's just boogie on past this slide. So when we talk about software monetization, it's a overall strategy for your business to deliver value in your software, be able to capture that value from your software, be able to control usage of your software such that you're being able to, you're in a position where you're monetizing it. So we work with a lot of companies, again, that are moving from perpetual licensing. Oops, that was a mistake. Sorry about that. Perpetual licensing to subscription, subscription to usage-based, and so forth, and just really trying to figure out what their overall software strategy is. But when you have something in place with an enforcement system around it and an entitlement system around it, it does make your business more flexible. It helps deliver a positive experience to the customers and allows you to scale and so forth. So I'm not going to exactly read this slide to you, but there's some goodness in there for sure. All right, so the title of this slide are good marketing people put together with these horrible purple colors. Is why do I need an SM strategy? What this means is, as you think about the needs of your business, I sum it up to the companies that we talk to, is that the licensing piece of your business is, look at it as being in the middle of this huge Venn diagram in your business, essentially the middle of this chart here, where it touches so many pieces of your business, from order entry to your sales teams to your product teams, certainly operations, finance, IT, support, the whole nine yards. So, and not every system that's in place for software license enforcement, et cetera, is the same. And you really have to ask yourself, what's important to us, right? What do we want to do as a business? What is it more important, for example, to have customer self-service for license activation, or is it more important for us to have IP protection or really strong security? Because sometimes these things don't exactly go hand in hand, meaning if you really want a self-service license activation system, you may have to give up some security in order to get there, and vice versa. So again, the idea is really understand what are the needs of the business from the top going down. What are you really trying to do? You're trying to drive cost out of IT. You're trying to consolidate your back end infrastructure so that you give a better customer experience and so forth. So, the first idea that I tell customers is that they really need to understand what the heck they're trying to achieve. Now, one other thing I want to mention here is that when we talk to companies around license management and enforcement, a lot of times they'll think about it in terms of this guy here, right? IP protection and security and piracy prevention and all those things within your application that prevent users from using more software than they bought, which is a good thing. Not using more software than they bought is a good thing, but thinking about protecting your asset so that customers can't do that or end users can't do that. But oftentimes when you take the approach of working from a security perspective towards your operational end of the business, you tend to lose sight of your customers and what their experience is when you buy something. So it's a little hard to describe, but again, what I'm trying to tell you is that you need to look at the whole picture and really try to understand, is this a technical project where we're trying to get more control, we're trying to get more security, or is this more of a project where we need to get more customer self-service and you're really focusing on the operational end of your business? And sometimes those two things can be in conflict with each other. So you have to get your arms around that. Okay. This is a really pretty marketing slide that I'm going to skip. Okay, so this is a slide that I built a long time ago. I use it all the time. And what it does, I did not make these colors, by the way. They're terrible, and we need to update them. However, the idea here is if you think about all the things that a business needs to do in order to put in, let's say, a license enforcement system that's truly integrated with your back office, you have to go through all these steps. And I'm not going to read the slide to you, but it starts from trying to understand what it is you're trying to solve, and you go through, choosing a licensing vendor, hopefully us, and you start building that enforcement or so into your product. And what ends up happening in our space is that our customers, for whatever reason, tend to gravitate towards the technical part of the puzzle. So this falls in line with what I was saying on the previous slide, where it's not about generally the key to everything isn't exactly what happens within your software working on the end user system. In order to make the whole program successful, you really have to take a look at the business process around it. And what generally happens is you'll end up having more business integration issues or business integration challenges than you will technical ones. And what that means is you have to start to think about all the different cases where, excuse the phone in the background, all the different cases where business process comes into play, such as, how are you going to do trials? How are you going to do upgrades? How are you going to sell modules? What happens if a customer wants to move a license from machine to machine? How are you going to support your partners? How are you going to support your sales teams? What happens if you put a license key system or an enforcement system into place and you have a customer that's just can't get the silly key to work, and they're down or they lost the key and so forth. So how are your support teams going to handle those emergency situations? So the idea here and the point of the slide is that in general, you have more of a business integration issue than you do a technical one, because the technical bits of this are usually ones that are solvable. And not that the business process isn't, but for whatever reason, they're not quite as obvious. So what we like to do is have folks like you rely on us to come in and coach you through certain best practices and different situations so that we can help you identify the things that might sting you. All right, let's move on. Okay, so here's another thing I always recommend companies that are starting out is to make sure that you get executive buy-in and have an executive sponsor for your entitlement or licensing project. I'm going to skip this. Yes, I'm going to look at this slide for a second. So I'm going to come back to the point on the previous slide, but we're going to look at it. I'm going to discuss it using this slide here. As I mentioned before, license management kind of sits in the middle of this big Venn diagram between R&D and sales and support and so forth. And a lot of times, each of these silos will have its own executive, vice president, and there is no licensing silo. Make sense? No licensing silo. So who owns it? We're going to talk about ownership coming up because that's always a big one. But when you think about your entitlement system and program, there's no clear owner. Therefore, there may not be a clear executive sponsor. And again, some of these projects start as R&D projects because the software needs license enforcement, etc. But then as soon as you introduce a back office to manage it, now you're talking about IT and then order fulfillment, support and so forth. And it can become unclear who's really driving the project. It can be clear who's funding the project and who really owns it. So you got to sort that stuff out. And sometimes it could be a collaborative effort between vice presidents. But we've seen many organizations start with taking on a licensing project, either as an IT project or an R&D project, without executive buy-in from the other silos, and they tend to get stalled. So it's certainly a team sport. Wow, look at that build. That's marketing for you. Look at that. All right, ownership. So here's a big topic. When I say big topic, it's a common topic. I get asked this question quite a bit. I get pulled into customer calls that are, where I'm trying to help them through some of these challenges. Who owns this program? Who owns this project? Because as you saw in the previous slide, the license enforcement system and the overall puzzle is certainly a team sport. So what I have found that's most effective, I'm going to pop back a slide here, is the owner of a licensing program, and I do say program for a reason, I'll come back to that point. The more successful ones that we see tend to be ones where the person who owns it has a really good understanding of your customers. And what I mean by that is they understand how your customers buy. They understand the license models. They understand that, you can buy a subscription that's a network license or floating with optional modules. This is how you upgrade. They understand how all that stuff works. They understand how your customers deploy. They understand how your channel works, and are really, customer focused. And there tends to not be a clean place to put the owner of the licensing program. Generally, it's usually ends up being somebody in either product management, particularly if you're a smaller company and you can't quite figure it out or can't find a clean place for it. Larger customers, the licensing program oftentimes is split between somebody in operations on the IT side, order operations, and then the enforcement side, somebody in product, the product management may own it. But the idea is that if you don't have an owner of your program, you can create an unsustainable and mess on your hands that you're going to have to address in a few years. So, and I keep coming back to this word program because when you're starting a licensing project, which is the title of this webinar, the overall project really isn't a project. It's a program. So yes, there's project work to be done to initialize and get you to market and launch and test and all that good stuff that go into a project. But especially for mid to large size companies, you've got a program on your hands, and that's something that needs to be nurtured. It needs to be massaged over time, revisited, etc. The more successful ones, the more successful programs that I've either worked with or had customers work with, they're the ones that have standardization across products. So there's one way or a very few sets of ways in which license enforcement would get baked into the product. They tend to have drive consistency across those products. So if your customer buys product A from business unit 1 of your company and they buy product X from business unit 7 of your company and they happen to buy them on the same order, right? They get the same type of email, they get the same experience, your activation system is the same. Those types of consistency points will pay off in the long run. And if you don't have consistency, those are the things that tend to drive your customers nuts, which some of you may already be familiar with. So the idea is consolidation, consistency, efficiency, etc. So to summarize on the ownership, the team that usually ends up owning the program usually ends up in product management, but I would recommend somebody either in support or maybe even in somebody reporting into sales in an operation role be the overall owner who understands your customers, understands how they take software. When I say take it, meaning how they procure it, how they deploy it, and so forth. So you know how to make those right decisions and trade-offs for your customers. All right, so let's go past this. I'm going to build out this slide. Oops, here we go. Sorry about the, yeah. Conduct regular reviews and planning sessions. This gets back into the program idea where it's very healthy to revisit what the heck you folks are trying to do every couple of years. So the best way that I have found personally to do this is to have conversations with these sales reps and say, are we selling the way we need to sell? Right? Do you have the license models that are that align with market need? Do we need to be more modular? Do we need to sell on a usage-based metric? Do we need to be less controlling, if you will, or give the customer more flexibility and less and worry less about piracy, or vice versa? Do we have to tighten up our security? Right? Are we selling the right way? Is the tail wagging the dog? Meaning, are you, Mr. Sales Rep, are you selling the way you have to because that's kind of how things work, or are you truly selling the way you want to? I did a customer engagement in the UK a few years ago, and we spent a whole day with a customer, etching out what this license enforcement system would look like, because they were replacing their current one from one of our competitors to our stuff. And we thought we had everything smoothed out. And then their VP of sales showed up the second day. I should have had him show up the first day. And he just said, you guys need to back up, because this whole system, while it's probably an improvement over what we have today, these aren't the conversations that we want to have with our customers. We want to do things differently. We want the customer to use as much software as they want. I want you guys to think about doing less locking of software and more measuring of software. So it was a completely different model. And that only happens, again, if you engage the folks who are selling your products and really understand the best way for you guys to drive revenue. And personally, I've had these conversations with our heads of sales back before I came to SafeNet, and again, the conversations: are we selling the way we need to? Is the tail wagging the dog? Should we be doing this license enforcement stuff at all, or are you guys you guys meaning sales reps? Can you make your number if we take it out and do more measuring? So I think those conversations are healthy to have. It may simply validate what you're doing. It may serve as a forcing function to change direction at some point. Okay. Okay, I'm going to just cover this one last slide. Yeah, so the idea at the top level, looking down, is to truly think about how you're selling, what types of business models are going to help you drive revenue, whether it's a subscription, whether it's perpetual, whether it's a modular-based approach. How are you going to deal with subscriptions? How are you going to deal with maybe a usage-based or a metered type of model, capacity, etc., right? Do you have the right level of protection in your software, or maybe you have too much? And what I mean by that is protecting yourself from customers inadvertently using more software than they are entitled, or maybe trying to intentionally use up more software than they're entitled, and also protecting the IP itself. So protecting your application from reverse engineering. We've got solutions for that, as well as simple license protection. And then, as I mentioned before, these things tend to, can start to fight each other if you don't think them through. Is what is your customer experience going to be? Right? Is your customer experience for somebody who's just buying over the web the same as when you sell an enterprise deal to a huge insurance company or something? Are you catering towards the right audience? Do your customers have what they need to get up and running quickly, to get help? and to be able to manage those assets longer term. And then finally, is the whole system a well-oiled machine, or at least well-oiled enough so that you have a level of automation, you don't have manual processes in the middle. Not only are those expensive, but they introduce risk, they introduce, time to market challenges, and so forth. So, we kind of sit right in the middle of all these. We have these conversations with companies every day around, helping them with one or all four of these areas, and really trying to put something in place that works for them, and it's catered towards their needs and their business. So if you think about coming back to us, I think a SafeNet/Gemalto webinar would be off point if we didn't wave our flag here. But our vision is to help companies be able to monetize and deliver on, with any sales channel on all types of devices. In fact, most of our high-end customers aren't just software companies, but they're actually hardware companies. They're device manufacturers. They're in the healthcare, they're business. They're in the telecom and networking spaces, delivering appliances and so forth. And they're trying to drive more value through software and be able to monetize that software, and so forth. So our thinking is to put you in a spot where you can run on any device, you can sell through any sales channel, whether it's on premise, in any environment, embedded, virtual, etc., with the business model that meets your needs. It's pretty rare, I would say, for us on our side to work with a company that has a business model, truly has a business model that we can't support. So whether it's subscription or pay-per-use or capacity-based licensing, I think we've kind of seen it all. Sometimes we've seen some models that are pretty complex, but for the most part, we've got end-to-end solutions that help hardware companies, that help software companies, that help SaaS vendors, etc., all the way from ordering through execution, upgrade, as well as a pretty comprehensive professional services team that I report into that allow you to give you assistance through planning, execution, project management, etc. So that's what we do. I think, yes, and we have lots of customers. Okay. Finally, for contact information, there's safenet-inc.com. If you go to safenet.com, it's this tiny little electronics store in Connecticut or something like that. So don't do that one. It's safenet-inc.com, or you can hit up gemalto.com, and we're under software monetization, and there's some other URLs there. Our blog is licensinglive.com, and I think that's it. So let's see if we have questions. I'm going to come out of this mode. Sorry. And if there are any questions, yes, there are questions, but I'm trying to get to them. Sorry. There's a question around the use of keys. So the question is, we've been using the SafeNet Sentinel Pro keys for ages, and are they still available? The answer is I don't know, because I don't sell Sentinel Pro keys. However, folks should have my email address. I'll give it to you, and you can ping me the question. If it's not in these slides, I'm not sure if it is or not. I'll give you my contact information, ping me the question, and we'll get you an answer. Okay, any other questions? I think that's it. If you have a question, please submit it. I'll just hang on for 1 other second. Okay. So I think, David Nason, if you can hear me, I think you might be able to speak. And if you're speaking, I can't hear you. So if you do have a question, you can enter it into the GoToMeeting GUI. We do have a question. Oh, here we go. There are more questions. Where do you get a copy of the slide deck? I can send that to you if you send me your email address. Anshu, specific case capabilities around embedded devices and their monetization. Yes, so we have some technology. One of our enforcement technologies called RMS supports embedded. We have we've got a couple different technology that support embedded, and we're doing even more work to create license enforcement technologies that run on embedded devices with small footprints that support, the environments that are appropriate for those types of devices. So yes, absolutely, this is a direction that's important to us. And we'll just keep going. Aaron Mahoney, my buddy Aaron, will we be able to see the slides of recording of this? I believe we are posting. I can send you the slides, by the way, and replay. I think our marketing folks will publish that somewhere. Not sure. So other than that, if there are any other questions, what I'm going to do actually is go all the way back here, if you can still see my screen, and I'm going to put my email address in here, which is so you guys can see it. So any other things that you want to follow up on, you can ping me directly. We offer consulting workshops to help companies plan, help get their arms around use cases and requirements and workflows, and ultimately answer the question of how's all this stuff going to work. So not only do we provide the technical solutions, but the business practices around it. Oh, question from Martin Peterson. What is the ROI that most of your clients see? You know what? That is a really great question. I'm going to give you a very marketing-esque answer, but it's the right answer and it's the true answer. A lot of our customers, because we price on a value basis, right? They don't exactly tell us what they're making off or what revenue they're driving based on our solutions. So the rule of thumb is around 20%. My experience prior to SafeNet with 3 different software vendors was about 20%. And the way I answered that question was, first of all, sometimes it's hard to measure. We have one customer in the UK. This is a SafeNet customer who put in our RMS technology and EMS, and within the first quarter, they said they bumped their revenue up 55%. Now, he didn't say it was 55% of what. So I don't know if it was $100 going 150 or it's 100 million going 150 million. Personally, I think that number is kind of high. I wouldn't expect that within our space. Again, 20% is about right. And if we go back to the idea of talking to your sales reps, what I would do at least every couple years, year and a half, is I would go to our most senior salespeople that really understand their customers and understand how we're selling value, et cetera, and ask them what they think would happen if we took the license enforcement system out. Just take it out. And the question is, if we rip this thing out, are you still going to make your number? And if not, what are you going to be short by? And at the end of the day, this over the course of, gosh, I was doing that for 15 years before I came to SafeNet. Over the course of that time period, different sales leaders, different companies, different profiles, different geographies, the answers all came back to be about the same. And sales reps thought that the license enforcement system was driving about 20% of their number every quarter, meaning if you took it out, customers would simply buy less software. And they would, if they had to guess, probably about 20% less. So yeah, that's what we do. How long does an implementation usually take? That's the million-dollar question. So clearly there are a lot of dependencies. And if you're talking about an end-to-end system, the rule of thumb that I use with a mid-sized company, if we're talking about putting in a back office that's perhaps integrated with your ordering system, say Oracle or even Salesforce, having a back office component that knows how to, knows your different license models, engineering your product so that it has our APIs in it, and in really managing all the business processes around it, I would plan on 6 to 9 months. If 6 to 9 months on the short end, if you know what you're doing. And as I mentioned before, it's not just a technical challenge, because your developers will get a hold of our APIs and they'll look at it and they'll say, well, this isn't very hard, right? But the question is, what's going to happen when a customer actually orders something, right? What do they get? What's the email look like? When they click on the link, where do they go? Is it clean? Do they know what to do? If they don't know what to do they know who to call? If they know who to call, does that person know who to call if they don't know how to help the customer, right? So it's an entire ecosystem of business processes around, around your licensing system. So, and there are a lot of things to think about, and we can help coach you through them. Again, mid-sized company, if you're just starting out, and we're starting from scratch, maybe starting with one product line or two, we can get you up and running pretty quickly, technically. But I would say from the time you kick off the project to the time you go live, I would plan on about three calendar quarters, somewhere in there. All right. Any other questions? It'd be great if you people could actually just talk to me, but I guess the webinar doesn't allow that, so we have to do them like this. All right. So I think we're going to wrap. You have my email address. You can still see it on the screen. If any other questions, just call me. Just ping me, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thank you for your time, your patience, and your attention. Cheers.